Welcome to the Perspective Knoll. Here we launch chapters once a week from original stories and occasionally other creative videos. Feel free to like and subscribe.
Chapter 13. A rescue team is made. Anthony led Charles to his large SUV in front of the Spencer house. Charles had given Anthony directions to a location he felt would be the best place to keep the painting at. It was only 15 minutes or so down the road. They had just pulled into the subdivision where Charles wanted them to go when one of the rear tires blew. Shit! Anthony swore loudly. Rotten luck, but before I made the drive over here, I was told that one of my rear tires was showing the bands within the tire and was basically a ticking time bomb. It's fine, we're here anyways, said Charles. They went down another road and turned right, and on the corner house they stopped on the driveway. Let me go in first. You just wait here so I can break the news to her, Charles said as he dashed out of the car. He walked briskly up the driveway and to the front door and knocked. The door opened and it was Laurie, Shawn's wife, standing there. Charles, what the hell? Laurie shouted and stepped forward and nearly pushed him off the front step. It's been 3 days. I have heard nothing from you or my husband. The goddamn police department has been trying to get a hold of you as well, and they also have received nothing. I know this because they have been contacting me. So, what's really going on here? Where's Shawn? Easy, Laurie, just hold on a second and let me explain, Charles said while catching his breath. You have 10 seconds, go. She was beyond pissed off, and really, could anyone blame her? Damn. Okay, so there's a lot, it's very complicated, and I think you might want to sit down. 5 seconds. Laurie was getting more intense, and her face was starting to get red with anger, and that's putting it mildly. Okay. Just wait a second. Charles then ran to the back of the SUV and pulled out the painting. Laurie was dumbstruck, and Charles couldn't tell if this painting was confusing her or making her more willing to explode at him. I need to put this up in your house, anywhere, it doesn't matter, please just go with me on this. Laurie was puzzled, but there was a curiousness that she needed to satisfy at that moment. So, she allowed him and looked at the SUV one last time and noticed Anthony sitting there, staring back at her. He waved awkwardly and she returned a wave that seemed just as out of place. Once inside, Charles had already taken a portrait down of Laurie's favorite beach house that her father once owned, and placed the portrait of the view from within the shed and the cabin in the background, onto the wall. I hope that ugly painting explains everything, Charles, she said as she folded her arms and waited impatiently to see where all this was going. More than you will know. Charles then reached a hand inside the painting, and the next moment, he vanished. This left Laurie so stunned that at first, she wasn't sure what she had just witnessed. It was so bizarre that her mind was unable to process it. Charles, she asked as she unfolded her arms and moved closer to the painting. Laurie was about to touch it herself when the image flashed and suddenly a ball of fur came tumbling into her living room. She shrieked as she realized that a massive bear was getting its bearings and had just locked eyes with her. Laurie then paused and eyed the bear with a sense of familiarity. Charles, she asked in a shaky voice. No, I'm known as Harmon, he answered, and Harmon stretched out and sniffed the air hard. Wow, this place must not be for old people. It smells great. Laurie was about to faint, she could feel it, but the next moment Charles reappeared through the painting and stumbled as he hit the ground. Wow, that's really not that hard to get used to, Charles said as he straightened himself and surveyed the room to see what was happening. Sure enough, Laurie had fainted and hit the floor hard. Charles called Anthony in and the pair of them were able to place Laurie on the couch, and they waited for her to awaken once more. Harmon in the meantime was raiding the pantry and eating anything that wasn't in a can. Charles took this opportunity to call the sergeant of the Peoria Police Department and let him know that he was okay. There were many questions that the sergeant had for him, but Charles intentionally left them open-ended. He called just to let him know that he was all right and that he was in pursuit of the killer and that he had Shawn with him. 20-some-odd minutes later, Laurie had awakened, and the first person she saw was Anthony, who at the time was looking at his cell phone. "Who the hell are you?" she demanded as she sat up in a very guarded position. "Whoa there, lady, my name is Anthony Spencer. I came here with Charles and I'm currently helping with an investigation," he explained as he put his phone back in his pocket. "Spencer? You mean your father was, oh hell, what was his name?" Laurie was trying to remember the story that Charles gave them more than 3 days ago. "Ed, and my mother is Chloe," Anthony answered. "That's right. I'm so sorry for your loss." Laurie tried to sound sincere, and her guard had almost fully dropped. "That is for a second," because she then scanned the room, and there, lying down in front of the wide hallway that led from the living room to the kitchen, was Harmon, and he was staring back at her with his head on the floor and licking his lips clear of the food debris. Before she could react, Charles had returned to the living room and had just told Harmon to stay. "Laurie, I hate to bring you into this sort of thing, it's been a crazy ride," began Charles as he sat across from her in one of the lounge chairs. "I don't know where to begin. Start by explaining the giant man-eating bear in my house," she said quietly and slowly, as if she were to react too much one way or another that it would provoke the beast. "That's Harmon, he's a bear from the Hiatus Mountains, was it?" He looked over towards Harmon and asked. "Yeah, that's right," Harmon answered as his head was still resting on the carpet. Laurie raised her eyebrows and was unable to speak, and yet she clearly wanted to say something. All she managed as a response was, she flattened her lips and nodded her head. "And it speaks," she squeaked. "The painting there on the wall is a bridge from our world into his. It's known as Lufforain, and Ed and Chloe go way back with Harmon. They have been in and out of Lufforain many times over the years." Charles paused and allowed that little bit of info to sink in. "Apparently this is not the only painting that has this connection with this other world. Where is Shawn?" Laurie suddenly asked, and her eyes became cloudy as if she was about to break down and cry. Charles took a deep breath and wasn't sure how to word his explanation. "He is still in Lufforain, and last I checked he was fine." "Last you checked?" Laurie was now building that anger up again and stared hard into Charles. "You have no idea where he is?" "I have an idea, but I need help getting to him," Charles answered. "Look, Harmon and Anthony both have agreed to come back to Lufforain with me and to get him back and to bring the one who killed Ed to justice." Anthony had cleared his throat and eyed Charles. "Are you sure you want to keep the painting here? What if Argatha tries to come back and get to my mother? Laurie here could be caught in the crossfire of the fairies' plans to silence those she is after." "I'm sorry, but who is Argatha?" Laurie asked before Charles could answer. "She is a fairy and has been very kind to my mother for over 4 decades, Anthony explained. "She was never that close with my father, but then again, he wasn't close to many people. He didn't have the personality to have many friends. Anyways, she killed my father in the end, according to Charles and his lawman abilities. But Argatha has lied about some key things, and it may be possible that she is after my mother." "Any idea where she could be?" "Well, back in Lufforain," asked Charles. "A number of places. A good place to start is the house my parents built where the other side of this painting is waiting." Anthony pointed to the painting on the wall. The Western Kingdom is another likely place, the Wood Elves another. Beyond that, it's anyone's guess." Charles took a sip of his water and thought for a moment. Now that he knows who was to blame for the death of Ed Spencer, how would he go about capturing her? It is a fairy, and she can go invisible and could be anywhere in a vast world that he himself was so unfamiliar with. Charles very well could ask the Wood Elves about other places Argatha could be, but now there is an uneasy feeling towards Valinar and the rest of the Wood Elves, because they were the first ones Argatha had trusted him and Shawn to meet. Maybe the elves were not supposed to let them go, but Jolene put a wrench in their plans. "Look, I think the longer we stay here the more time Argatha has the freedom to do what she wants, so we need to start searching for her now." Charles finally broke the silence and stood up and went back into the kitchen to refill his cup one last time. "You can't leave me alone here with this thing. What if the fairy returns and sees me and kills me?" Laurie was now following Charles into the kitchen in a panic. "It's possible she is already here," Anthony answered as he stood up from his chair. That's why Charles wanted to bring the painting elsewhere, because if she is in this world, then she would have no way of entering the safety of Lufforain, because the painting is her only way back and it would no longer be down the road where she thinks it is. On the other hand, yes, she could return to this world if she is currently in Lufforain, but she would have no idea where she was if she entered our world from this house. Let's do this then, Charles began. Take the painting off the wall in the shed once we are through it and then hide it. Somewhere, maybe inside the house, or take it with us. I might know a guy in Jordan's Post who'd be willing to watch over it for us. This way the bridge to this painting is cut off as long as the one in Lufforain is not hung up. Laurie, I think you should come with us. Laurie was stunned and was at a loss for words. She was both surprised and outraged that Charles would volunteer her for such a task. Why would I go with you? Why don't you just leave the painting here off the wall so that she cannot get through? Because apparently these things don't work unless both sides are hung up, Charles explained. I don't know how long we'll be gone for, and we'll have no way of letting you know that we need to get back home. So, it makes more sense to leave this one up and then take down the painting in the shed on the other side. Keep it with us so that all we need to do, when we're ready, is to rehang the other one up and boom, we're back here. Laurie, you're safer with us anyways, Anthony tried to reassure her. There's a bonus to some of those who enter Lufforain from here. Charles here received abilities that allow him to see things that have happened in the past, well, criminally. I myself can change into something like a Hulk. A massive man of strength and surprisingly fast for my body weight. You might have some powers of your own that could surface once on the other side. Powers, like a superhero? She asked, and there was a hint of intrigue in her voice. Maybe, Anthony answered with a mild grin. Look, I want to get Shawn back for you, Laurie. So, the more hands on deck we have on this venture, the better the odds of us getting him back. Charles walked over to the front door and locked it and then went around and closed all the blinds in the house. Okay, so are you guys ready to go back? Yes, answered Anthony. I'm ready, Harmon replied as he stood up and stretched. Me too, said Charles, and he looked back at Laurie. What about you? Laurie took a deep breath and was about to answer, and then she held up one finger and left the room. She went into her bedroom and then closed the door behind her. The other three had no idea what she was doing, but the finger in the air told Charles that he should wait a minute. Sure enough, a few minutes later Laurie emerged with different clothes on. She wore jeans and a t-shirt, a baseball cap of the Phoenix Suns, and grabbed a backpack that she soon filled up with goods from the pantry. She also grabbed some duct tape, a large kitchen knife, and threw in some cooking utensils. Now I'm ready, she answered. Okay, Harmon, you first, Charles insisted. Harmon literally dove into the painting head first, and it shook violently as if it was going to swing off the nail that held the picture on the wall. Anthony then put his hand through it and he too vanished. Charles wanted Laurie to go before him just in case she got cold feet so that he could talk her through it. Yet she went very confidently towards it and, like Anthony, stuck her hand through first and then the rest of her body followed. Charles was last to go, and there was a thought in his head that letting Laurie come with him was a very bad idea. Yet he wasn't about to call her back now, so into the painting he went.